The message came through space like a cold wind. It moved from one relay beacon to another, crossing the vast darkness between stars. Each beacon picked it up and sent it forward, until it reached Earth's orbital command station. Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the command center. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets across half the galaxy. Now he watched as the message appeared on the huge holographic display in front of him. The message was short. It was also clear. Humanity will present itself for judgment. You will send one ship. The ship must be unarmed. You will come to these coordinates. This is not a request. Morrison read it twice. Then he read it a 3rd time. Around him, his staff waited in silence. They all knew what this meant. The Galactic Council had finally made its move. Commander Lisa Chen stepped forward. She was Morrison's second-in-command, a woman who had earned her position through 20 years of hard service. Sir, those coordinates are at the nexus point. Morrison nodded. He knew the nexus point well. It was the center of Council space where all the major alien fleets gathered. It was also the most heavily defended location in known space. They want us surrounded, Chen continued. Every major fleet will be there. The Hegemony, the Vaxi, the Etherians, all of them. Morrison turned away from the display. He walked to the window that looked out at Earth below. The blue planet turned slowly, white clouds drifting across its surface. Humanity's home, the world they had left behind to claim their place among the stars. How long have we been in space, Commander? Morrison asked. 207 years, sir. And in that time, we've built colonies on 40 worlds. We've created trade routes that span thousands of light years. We've done in 2 centuries what took other species millennia. Morrison turned back to face his staff. And now they want to put us in our place. Lieutenant Sam Cooper, a young officer fresh from the academy, spoke up. Sir, what ship should we send? If it has to be unarmed, maybe one of the diplomatic vessels? Morrison smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Lieutenant Cooper, what's the status of the Retribution? The room went quiet. Everyone knew about the Retribution. It was humanity's greatest achievement. A Titan-class warship that had taken 20 years to build. 2 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack moons and protected by shields that could withstand a supernova. Cooper's eyes went wide. The Retribution, sir? But the message said unarmed. The message said 1 ship, Morrison corrected. It did not specify what kind of ship. And I don't recall ordering anyone to remove the Retribution's weapons. Chen understood immediately. You're going to send our biggest warship to a peace meeting. I'm going to send a message of our own, Morrison said. Get me Captain Blake. 3 hours later, Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the Retribution. He was younger than Morrison, but his eyes held the same hardness. He had earned his command through skill and determination, rising through the ranks faster than anyone in fleet history. The bridge of the Retribution was massive. It needed to be to control a ship this size. 20 officers worked at various stations, monitoring everything from weapons to life support. The main view screen showed the curve of Earth's moon, gray and cratered. Blake's executive officer, Commander Katie Price, walked over to him. She carried a data pad with their orders. Captain, I've reviewed Admiral Morrison's instructions. We're really going to fly into the heart of Council space? That's correct, Commander. In a fully armed warship? Also correct. Price put down the data pad. Sir, with respect, this could be seen as an act of war. The Council specifically requested an unarmed vessel. Blake sat down in his command chair. It was positioned in the center of the bridge, giving him a view of all stations. Commander Price, how many times has the Council threatened our colonies? 17 times in the last year. And how many trade ships have they impounded? 34. And how many times have they demanded we submit to their authority? Price sighed. Too many to count. Exactly. Blake leaned back in his chair. The Council thinks humanity is weak. They think we're just another young species to be controlled and managed. It's time to show them the truth. He pressed a button on his chair. All hands, this is the captain. We have received orders to proceed to the Nexus Point for a meeting with the Galactic Council. I won't lie to you. This could be dangerous. The entire Council fleet will be there, but we are the Retribution. We are the finest ship Earth has ever built, with the finest crew. Whatever happens, we will represent humanity with strength and honor. He paused, then added, all departments report readiness. The reports came in quickly. Engineering was ready. Weapons were ready. Shields were ready. Medical was ready. Every part of the ship was prepared for whatever might come. Navigation, Blake called out. Plot a course for the nexus point. The navigation officer, a woman named Helen Ross, worked at her console. Course plotted, Captain. At maximum speed, we'll arrive in 72 hours. Good, Helm, engage hyperdrive. The ship hummed with power. Outside the view screen, the stars began to stretch and blur. Then reality twisted and the Retribution jumped into hyperspace. The journey had begun. As the ship traveled through the strange realm of hyperspace, Blake called his senior staff to the conference room. They gathered around the long table, each one a veteran of dozens of missions. I want everyone to understand what we're walking into, Blake said. The Council has been moving against humanity for years. They see our rapid expansion as a threat. They're afraid of us. Lieutenant Jake Miller, the tactical officer, nodded. The intelligence reports suggest they're planning something. This isn't just a meeting. Agreed, Blake said, which is why we're going in ready for anything. Miller, I want all weapons systems checked and double-checked. We won't fire first, but if they start something, we'll finish it. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez raised his hand. Captain, the new shield generators have never been tested in actual combat. They work in simulations, but reality might be different. Then we'd better hope the simulations were accurate, Blake replied, because we might need those shields. The meeting continued for another hour. They discussed tactics, contingencies, and worst-case scenarios. Every officer knew their job. Every system was reviewed. By the time they finished, Blake felt confident his crew was ready. As the Retribution traveled through hyperspace, news of their mission spread through human space. On Earth, people watched the news with worry and hope. On the colony worlds, families gathered to pray for the crew. Everyone understood what was at stake. This was not just about one ship or one crew. This was about humanity's future among the stars. Would they be free to explore and expand? Or would they be forced to submit to alien rule? Blake stood alone in his quarters that night, looking at a photo of Earth. He had been born there in a small town in Kansas. He had grown up looking at the stars, dreaming of traveling among them. Now he commanded one of the most powerful ships ever built, and he was flying it into the heart of danger. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Enter, he called. Commander Price walked in. Captain, we've received additional intelligence from Fleet Command. The hegemony has moved 3 battle groups to the nexus point. The Vaxi have sent their entire 3rd Fleet. Blake turned to face her. They're gathering their forces. It looks that way, sir. This might be more than just a judgment. This might be an execution. Blake picked up the photo of Earth and set it on his desk. Then we'll have to make sure we're the ones left standing, Commander. Humanity is counting on us. As the Retribution continued toward its destination, the entire galaxy held its breath. The young species from Earth was about to face the combined power of the Galactic Council. Most believed humanity would submit or be destroyed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace exactly where it was supposed to. One moment the ship was traveling through the twisted realm of faster-than-light travel. The next, it emerged into normal space with a flash of light that announced its arrival to everyone watching. And everyone was watching. Captain Blake stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. Through the main view screen, he could see the nexus point spread out before them. It was unlike anything else in the galaxy. Hundreds of ships formed a perfect sphere in space, each one positioned with mathematical precision. They hung there like ornaments gleaming in the light of a distant star. My God, whispered Lieutenant Helen Ross from her navigation station. I've never seen so many ships in one place, Blake had to agree. The display was meant to intimidate, and it was working. He could see ships from every major species in the Council. The sleek silver vessels of the Etherians floated next to the brutal black warships of the hegemony. The organic-looking Vaxi cruisers pulsed with bioluminescent light, while the crystalline ships of the Zephrani reflected rainbow patterns across space. Tactical report, Blake ordered, keeping his voice calm. Lieutenant Jake Miller worked at his station, his fingers flying across the controls. I'm counting 317 vessels, Captain. Multiple ship classes from 43 different species. They formed a perfect containment sphere around our position. Blake nodded. He had expected this. Weapon signatures. 12 ships have targeting locks on us already. The Zephrani alone have 6 cruisers with main guns charged and ready. The hegemony dreadnought at bearing 27 Mark IV is running hot. Their plasma cannons could fire at any moment. Commander Price moved to stand beside Blake. She kept her voice low so only he could hear. They're not taking any chances. This is enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Or one Earthship, Blake added. He raised his voice. Communications, open a channel. All frequencies. The communications officer, Lieutenant Bobby Chen, nodded. Channel open, Captain. Blake straightened his uniform and faced the view screen. Galactic Council, this is Captain Ryan Blake of the Earthship Retribution. We have arrived as requested. We await your instructions. The response came immediately. The view screen shimmered and the image of Supreme Arbiter Kexval appeared. Blake had seen pictures of the Arbiter before, but they didn't do justice to the reality. Kexval was a crystalline being, its body composed of what looked like living diamond. Light refracted through its form in mesmerizing patterns, and when it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. You dare, Kexval said, its voice cold with anger. You dare bring a warship to these proceedings? Blake remained calm. Arbiter Kexval, your message requested one vessel. You did not specify its class or configuration. We have complied with your summons exactly as stated. The crystalline being pulsed with light, a sign of agitation. Do not play word games with us, human. You know what was intended. This ship is an insult to every civilized species present. I disagree, Blake replied. This ship is a testament to human engineering and determination. Would you prefer we had come in something smaller? Something weaker? Would that have made you feel more comfortable? Behind Kexval, Blake could see other council members. The hegemony representative, a massive creature covered in armor-like scales, leaned forward. The Vaxi ambassador, a being that looked like a mixture of plant and animal, writhed its tentacles in what Blake recognized as anger. Your arrogance will be your downfall, Kexval said. You are surrounded by the combined fleets of the Galactic Council. One ship, no matter how large, cannot stand against such force. Blake walked forward closer to the view screen. Arbiter, we came here as requested. We have made no aggressive moves. Our weapons, while present, are powered down. If there is to be violence here today, it will not be started by humanity. He paused, then added, Now, you summoned us for judgment. We are here. Proceed with your business. The channel closed, leaving the bridge in silence. Blake returned to his command chair and sat down. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, professional despite the tension. Captain, Miller said quietly, the hegemony fleet is moving. They're shifting into attack formation. Blake watched the tactical display. Sure enough, the brutal black ships of the hegemony were repositioning. They moved slowly but deliberately, taking up optimal firing positions around the Retribution. The Vaxi are moving too, Miller continued. Southern Hemisphere, coordinate 73 Mark 9. They're trying to box us in. Blake considered his options. He could maintain position and appear weak, or he could show them exactly what they were dealing with. All stations, this is the captain. Initiate Protocol 7. Around the bridge, his crew moved with practiced efficiency. Protocol 7 was something they had drilled dozens of times but never used in reality. It was meant for exactly this situation. Shields to maximum, Blake ordered. The shield officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, activated the defensive systems. Shields coming online, Captain. Full power to all generators. Outside the ship, space itself seemed to ripple. The Retribution's shield snapped into existence, a shimmering barrier of pure energy that extended nearly a kilometer from the hull in every direction. The power output was enormous, sending electromagnetic pulses washing over the nearby ships. Several of the smaller council vessels actually drifted backward from the force of it. Warning alarm sounded on dozens of bridges as sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. My God, someone said over an open channel. Blake thought it might have been from one of the Etherian ships. The main view screen activated again. Kexval reappeared, and this time the crystalline being was not alone. The entire council was visible behind it. Representatives from every member species. Humanity, Kexval began, its voice formal and cold. You stand accused of aggressive expansion into territories claimed by council members. You stand accused of unauthorized colonization of 17 worlds. You stand accused of refusing to submit to council authority and register your technology for approved distribution. The Arbiter paused, letting the words hang in space. How do you answer these charges? Blake stood again. We answer that space belongs to no one and everyone. We answer that empty worlds are free for any species to colonize. We answer that humanity will share its technology with whom it chooses, when it chooses, and not before. An uproar erupted in the council chamber. Dozens of aliens spoke at once, their voices creating a cacophony of sound. Blake waited patiently for them to quiet down. When they finally did, Kexaval spoke again. Your defiance is noted. The council has already reached its decision. Humanity is found guilty of all charges. The sentence is the immediate surrender of all human colonies and military assets. You will withdraw to Earth and remain there until the council decides you are ready to join civilized space. Blake felt his crew tense around him. This was it. The moment that would define humanity's future. No, Blake said simply. The single word cut through space like a knife. The council chamber fell silent. Even Kexval seemed stunned. No, the Arbiter repeated. You would defy the will of the Galactic Council? I would defend the rights of humanity, Blake replied. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not give up our ships. We will not crawl back to Earth like beaten dogs. If that is your judgment, then we reject it entirely. The hegemony representative roared, a sound that made several other council members step back. Then you choose war. You choose destruction. Blake's expression didn't change. We choose freedom. If you want war, that's your decision. Kexval raised what might have been an arm. You are one ship against hundreds. Your shields, no matter how impressive, cannot withstand the combined firepower of the council fleets. Surrender now and you may yet survive. Blake turned to his tactical officer. Miller, do we have a targeting solution on the dead moon at grid reference 279? Miller checked his console. Yes, Captain. It's about 3,000 kilometers in diameter. No atmosphere, no life signs. Just a big rock. Good. Blake turned back to the view screen. Arbiter Kexaval, members of the council, I want you to understand something. You see one ship, but this one ship has capabilities you cannot imagine. He sat back down in his command chair. Allow me to demonstrate. Foster, charge Railgun 3, 10% power only. Lieutenant Foster's hands moved across her console. Railgun 3 charging, 10% power confirmed. Target the dead moon. Fire when ready. The railgun fired. From the Retribution's hull, a tungsten rod no bigger than a telephone pole launched into space. It had been accelerated to 20% of the speed of light in less than a second. To the watching ships, it was invisible, moving too fast for sensors to track properly. The impact was not invisible. The dead moon shattered. 3,000 kilometers of solid rock cracked like an egg hit with a hammer. Massive chunks flew in all directions, some pieces bigger than starships. The moon didn't just break. It disintegrated, turned to dust and rubble by the sheer kinetic energy of a single shot. The silence that followed was complete. Every ship, every sensor, every pair of eyes or optical organs was focused on the expanding cloud of debris that had once been a moon. Blake let them process what they had seen. Then he spoke again, his voice calm and measured. Wait. The first shots came without warning. The hegemony fleet opened fire, their plasma cannons lighting up space with streams of superheated energy. The Vaxi followed immediately, their bioweapons launching clouds of acidic spores designed to eat through hull metal. The Zephrani energy beams lanced out, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a small ship. Captain Blake didn't even flinch. He sat in his command chair watching as hundreds of weapons fired at his ship. The bridge crew around him remained calm, though he could see tension in their shoulders. White knuckles gripping consoles. The weapons fire hit the Retribution's shields and simply stopped. Plasma splashed harmlessly across the energy barrier. Acid spores dissolved before they could reach the hull. Energy beams were absorbed and dissipated, their power feeding back into the shield generators. Shield status? Blake asked calmly. Lieutenant Amy Foster checked her readings. 99%, Captain. They're not even making us work for it. Blake nodded. He had expected this. Earth scientists had spent 50 years perfecting these shields. They had studied every known weapon in the galaxy and designed defenses against them all. The firing continued. More ships joined in, adding their weapons to the assault. Kinetic rounds, exotic particles, even some kind of gravity weapon that tried to crush the Retribution's hull. Nothing worked. The ship sat there unmoved and undamaged, while the combined might of the Galactic Council exhausted itself against her shields. How long has it been? Blake asked. Commander Price checked her chronometer. 10 minutes, 17 seconds, Captain. And they're already starting to slow down, Miller observed from tactical. Several ships are cycling their weapons to prevent overheating. The Vaxi cruiser at bearing 42 is completely depleted. They've got nothing left. Blake stood up. Open a channel. All frequencies. The firing gradually stopped. One by one, the ships ceased their attack as they realized the futility of it. Soon space was quiet again, though the tension remained thick enough to cut. Are you finished? Blake asked simply. No one answered. What could they say? They had just witnessed the impossible. A single ship had withstood the combined firepower of 300 vessels without taking damage. From the Zephrani flagship, Admiral Thexar spoke. The Zephrani were warriors, respected throughout the galaxy for their military prowess. What manner of technology is this? No shields could withstand such an assault. It violates the laws of physics as we understand them. Blake smiled slightly. Your understanding is limited, Admiral. Humanity has had 200 years to study and learn. We don't just copy what others have done. We innovate. We improve. We create things that have never existed before. He gestured to his ship. The Retribution shields don't just block energy. They absorb it, redirect it, use it to strengthen themselves. The more you shoot at us, the stronger our defenses become. This was partially true. The shields did have absorption capabilities, though they had limits. But Blake saw no reason to share those details with the Council. Supreme Arbiter Kexval appeared on the screen again. The crystalline being's light pattern showed confusion and something that might have been fear. This is impossible. Humanity is a young species. You've only been spacefaring for 2 centuries. The Council has existed for 5 millennia. And that's exactly your problem, Blake replied. He began walking around the bridge as he spoke, his voice carrying to every ship listening. You've existed for 5,000 years, and what have you done with that time? You've stagnated. You've become comfortable. You create rules and laws to keep things exactly as they are. He stopped by the tactical station, placing a hand on Miller's shoulder. Humanity doesn't accept limitations. When someone tells us something is impossible, we find a way to make it possible. When faced with a wall, we don't go around it. We go through it. The hegemony representative, Commander Grax, roared in frustration. Words, nothing but human words. You have strong shields, yes, but you are still one ship. You cannot defeat us all. Blake turned to face the screen. Commander Grax, would you like another demonstration? Lieutenant Foster, target the asteroid field at grid 77. I want a full spread, railguns 10 through 20. 5% power. Foster's fingers flew across her console. Targeting solution locked. Railguns charged to 5%. Fire. 11 railguns fired simultaneously. The tungsten rods streaked through space, invisible to most sensors. They hit the asteroid field with devastating effect. Asteroids the size of buildings vaporized instantly. Larger ones shattered into millions of pieces. In seconds, a field of rocks that had existed for millions of years was reduced to dust and memory. 5%, Blake repeated. We haven't even shown you what our energy weapons can do yet. The silence stretched out. Blake could imagine the conversations happening on other ships. Captains consulting with their governments, admirals recalculating odds, politicians reconsidering their positions. Finally, the Etherian ambassador spoke. The Etherians were one of the oldest council species, beings of pure energy who had long ago transcended physical form. Captain Blake, you have made your point. Your ship is powerful, but power alone does not grant you the right to ignore council law. Blake sat back down in his command chair. Ambassador, let me ask you something. When the Etherians first achieved spaceflight, did you ask permission? When you colonized your first world beyond your home, did you wait for someone else to approve? The energy being flickered, considering the question. Blake continued. Every species here expanded into space because they chose to. They explored because they wanted to see what was out there. They colonized worlds because they needed room to grow. But now that you're established, you want to deny that same opportunity to others? There must be order, Kexval insisted. Without the Council's guidance, there would be chaos. Wars over resources. Conflicts over territory. There are already wars, Blake pointed out. The hegemony conquered 6 species before joining the Council. The Vaxi fought the Zephrani for 50 years over mining rights. Don't pretend the Council prevents conflict. It just controls who's allowed to fight and who has to submit. Commander Price leaned close to Blake. Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures from the outer system. Multiple contacts incoming. Blake checked his personal display. Then he smiled. Perfect timing, members of the council, he said, standing again. You've seen what one human ship can do. Now let me show you something else. Space rippled at the edge of the system. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. First came the destroyers, sleek and deadly, then the cruisers bristling with weapons. Finally, 3 more Titan-class warships emerged, each one identical to the Retribution. 72 human vessels took positions around the nexus point. They didn't surround the council ships, but they didn't need to. Their presence alone changed everything. Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communication system. Captain Blake, this is Admiral Morrison aboard the Vanguard. Is there a problem here? Blake kept his expression neutral, though inside he was smiling. That depends entirely on the Council's next words, Admiral. Panic spread through the Council fleets. Ships that had been aggressive moments before now pulled back, creating more distance between themselves and the human vessels. Several species were openly communicating with their home governments, seeking new instructions. You planned this, Keksaval accused. This entire display was orchestrated from the beginning. No, Blake said firmly. We hoped for peace. We came prepared for war. There's a difference. The choice of which path we take has always been yours, Arbiter. Lieutenant Carl Davis at the science station spoke up. Captain, I've been reviewing the Council's own laws. Article 7, Section 4 states that any species capable of defending itself against the combined Council fleet is automatically granted sovereign status and a seat on the Council. Blake raised an eyebrow. Is that so? How interesting. It seems we've already passed your test, Arbiter. The question now is whether the Council will honor its own laws. The Council chamber erupted in argument. Different species took different positions. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for negotiation. A few suggested that humanity had indeed earned its place according to Council law. Through it all, the human fleet waited patiently. They made no aggressive moves, but their presence was impossible to ignore. Each ship was a reminder that humanity would not be pushed around. Blake used the time to check with his department heads. Engineering reported all systems functioning perfectly. Medical had no casualties. Morale was high throughout the ship. His crew had just faced down the entire Galactic Council and emerged unscathed. After an hour of debate, Keksaval returned to the communication channel. Captain Blake, the Council requires time to deliberate. You will maintain position while we discuss this matter. Of course, Blake replied. We'll be right here. Take all the time you need. The channel closed. Blake turned to his bridge crew. Well done, everyone. We've given them a lot to think about. Miller, maintain tactical awareness, but keep our weapons powered down. Foster, shields to standard levels. Let's not waste energy. Captain, Price said quietly. Do you think they'll see reason? Blake looked out at the assembled alien fleets. Some of the waiting stretched into its 4th hour. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Blake remained in his command chair, the picture of patience. But his mind was working, analyzing every piece of information that came across his screens. The Council fleets had pulled back into defensive clusters, grouped by species. The hegemony ships formed a tight battle formation, ready for combat at a moment's notice. The Vaxi vessels had linked together, their organic hulls actually merging at contact points to share resources. The Etherians had become nearly invisible, their energy forms dimmed to minimum levels. They're scared, Commander Price observed, standing beside Blake's chair. Look at them. Some of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, and they're acting like cornered animals. Blake nodded. Fear makes people do stupid things. Let's hope the Council is smarter than that. Lieutenant Miller looked up from his tactical console. Captain, I'm detecting communication traffic between the Council ships and their homeworlds. Heavy encryption, but the volume is massive. They're all asking for instructions. Good, Blake said. That means their governments are involved now. Politicians tend to be more practical than military commanders. They understand cost versus benefit. The science station chimed. Lieutenant Carl Davis frowned at his readings. Captain, I'm picking up something odd. There's a ship approaching from the far side of the system. It's not showing on normal sensors, but the gravitational displacement is visible. Blake stood up. Can you identify it? Davis worked at his console for a moment. It's using some kind of stealth technology. Very advanced. Wait, I'm getting a configuration match. Captain, it's a Sentinel-class vessel. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the Sentinels. They were the Council's secret weapons. ships that officially didn't exist. They were used for black operations, assassination missions, and other activities the Council didn't want traced back to them. Why would they send a sentinel here? Price asked. Blake's jaw tightened. Because someone on the Council wants a backup plan. If negotiations fail, they'll try to eliminate us through deception rather than direct combat. He turned to Miller. Target that ship. Don't fire, but make sure they know we see them. Miller grinned. With pleasure, Captain. The Retribution's targeting sensors locked onto the stealth ship. Immediately, the vessel changed course, moving away from the human fleet. But the damage was done. Everyone knew the Council had tried to sneak an assassin into the meeting. The main view screen activated. HFY appeared, and the crystalline being's light patterns showed agitation. Captain Blake, that vessel is not under Council authority. Really? Blake's voice was cold. A Sentinel-class ship using Council encryption codes arriving at a Council meeting is not under Council authority. Arbiter, if you're going to lie to me, at least make it believable. Behind HFY, the Council representatives argued among themselves. Blake could see finger-pointing, or the alien equivalent, as different species blamed each other for the Sentinel's presence. Blake held up his hand for silence. Arbiter, let me make something clear. We came here in good faith. We've shown remarkable restraint. But if you try something like this again, we will respond, and I promise you won't like our response. To emphasize his point, Blake nodded to Foster. The weapons officer powered up a single plasma cannon, its energy signature blazing across every sensor in the system. Then just as quickly she powered it down. Now, Blake continued, shall we discuss the real issue here? Or do you want to keep playing games? HFY's form flickered. The Council has been deliberating. There are different opinions on how to proceed. I'm sure there are, Blake said dryly. Let me help you. You have 3 options. Option 1. You accept humanity as a sovereign species with full Council membership and we all go home peacefully. Option 2. You continue to demand our submission, we refuse and we leave anyway, but now we're enemies. Option 3. You attack us, we defend ourselves, and a lot of beings die for no good reason. He paused, letting his words sink in. Personally, I prefer option 1. But the choice is yours. The Etherian ambassador drifted forward. Captain Blake, you speak of sovereignty and membership, but these things come with responsibilities. The Council exists to maintain order, to prevent conflicts that could destroy entire species. Are humans prepared for such responsibility? Blake smiled. Ambassador, humanity has prevented more conflicts than we've started. On Earth, we learned long ago that diversity makes us stronger. We have hundreds of cultures, thousands of languages, and yet we united to reach the stars. We can work with other species. We've already proven that through our trade agreements with non-Council worlds. Non-Council? Worlds that you've been secretly arming. The hegemony representative accused. We've shared defensive technology with species that requested it, Blake admitted. Usually species that were being threatened by Council members. Would you prefer we let them be conquered? This caused another uproar. Several Council species had indeed been expanding aggressively into non-Council space, using their superior technology to intimidate younger civilizations. The fact that humanity had been evening the odds didn't sit well with them. Admiral Morrison's voice came through on a private channel. Blake, this is Morrison. We're detecting movement in hyperspace. Multiple signatures heading this way. Blake kept his expression neutral as he responded quietly. Hostile? Unknown. But they're big, and there are a lot of them. Blake stood up. Arbiter HFY, are you expecting more ships? The crystalline being's patterns shifted to confusion. No, all Council forces are already present. Suddenly, space tore open in dozens of places. Ships poured out of hyperspace, but these weren't Council vessels. They were a motley collection of different designs and technologies. Some were sleek and modern, others looked ancient and patched together, but they all had one thing in common. They were armed, and they were surrounding the Council fleet. A new voice came over the communication channels. This is Admiral Kothar of the Free Worlds Alliance. We're here to support humanity's claim to sovereignty. Blake had to suppress a smile. The Free Worlds Alliance was made up of all the non-Council species that had been denied membership over the centuries. Many of them had received technology and support from Earth. Now they were returning the favor. This is outrageous, HFY's voice rang out. The Free Worlds have no standing here. We have as much standing as you give us. Admiral Kothar replied. The alien's voice was translated by computer, but the determination came through clearly. For too long, the Council has decided who deserves to reach the stars and who doesn't. You've kept us down, denied us resources, prevented us from growing. But humanity showed us another way. Blake watched his tactical display. The free world ships were positioning themselves between the Council fleet and the human vessels. They were actually protecting Earth ships, though Blake knew the Retribution didn't need protection. You see, Arbiter, Blake said, humanity doesn't stand alone. We've made friends, we've built alliances, we've shown that there's a different way to interact with other species, not through domination or control, but through mutual respect and cooperation. The Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, some calling for immediate military action, others for retreat. The situation had spiraled completely out of their control. Commander Grax of the Hegemony roared for silence. When he had it, he spoke directly to Blake. You've orchestrated this entire thing. The ship, the fleet, these allies. You've manipulated us from the beginning. No, Blake said firmly. We've simply refused to be manipulated by you. There's a difference. We came here ready for any possibility because we've learned that's the only way to deal with the Council. You respect strength, so we showed you strength. You understand force, so we demonstrated force. But what we really want is peace. He walked forward closer to the screen. The galaxy is big enough for all of us. There are billions of stars, trillions of planets. There's no need for us to fight over resources or territory. Humanity doesn't want to conquer anyone. We just want to be free to explore, to grow, to become what we're meant to be. And if that threatens the established order, Kexaval asked, then maybe the established order needs to change, Blake replied. The Council has controlled this part of the galaxy for 5,000 years. In all that time, how many species have you denied membership? How many civilizations have you held back? How many wars have you allowed to happen because it served your interests? He gestured to the free world ships. These species came here risking everything because they believe in a different future. A future where every species has the right to reach for the stars, where technology is shared, not hoarded, where diversity is celebrated, not suppressed. Blake returned to his chair. So, Arbiter, what's it going to be? Will the Council adapt to this new reality? Or will you cling to the old ways and risk losing everything? The silence that followed was deafening. Blake could see the weight of decision on every Council member's face, or whatever passed for a face among the different species. Finally, the Etherian ambassador spoke. Captain Blake, if humanity were granted Council membership, what assurances could you give that Earth would not use its technology to dominate others? Blake considered the question carefully. Ambassador? The debate raged for 6 hours. During that time, the Retribution remained at the center of the sphere, her crew at ready stations but making no aggressive moves. The human fleet held position with perfect discipline, while the Free World's alliance ships maintained their protective formation. Captain Blake used the time wisely. He spoke privately with Admiral Morrison, coordinating their strategy. He consulted with his department heads, ensuring all systems remained optimal. He even managed to eat a quick meal, knowing that showing such calm confidence would be noticed by those watching. And everyone was watching. The events at the Nexus Point were being broadcast across the galaxy. On Earth, billions of people gathered around screens witnessing history in the making. On the colony worlds, families held their breath knowing their future hung in the balance. Even on non-human worlds, beings watched with fascination as the old order crumbled before their eyes. Finally, Supreme Arbiter Kexval returned to the main communication channel. The crystalline being's light patterns were subdued, almost dim. Behind it, the council chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. Captain Blake, Kexval began, its voice formal and measured. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. Blake stood, his back straight, his expression neutral. Around him, his bridge crew held their breath. After extensive deliberation, Kexval continued, and in accordance with Article 7, Section 4 of our Charter, the Council recognizes humanity's sovereignty. A seat will be prepared for Earth's representative. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Blake held up his hand for silence. He knew there was more coming. Furthermore, Kexval said, the words clearly painful to speak, all current human colonies are recognized as legitimate territorial claims. Earth's exploration and expansion rights are hereby acknowledged. Blake nodded. Thank you, Arbiter. Humanity accepts the Council's recognition. But he didn't sit down. Instead, he walked forward, his eyes fixed on the screen. However, Blake said, there is one more matter to address. Kexaval's form flickered with surprise. What more could you possibly want? An apology, Blake said firmly. The council chamber erupted in outrage. The hegemony representative roared so loudly that the sound distorted through the speakers. The Vaxi ambassador's tentacles whipped through the air in agitation. Even the normally calm Etherians pulsed with indignation. You go too far, Kexval's voice cracked like breaking crystal. We have granted you everything you asked for. No, Blake corrected. You've granted us what was already ours by right. But you've also threatened our colonies. You've impounded our trade ships. You've dismissed our diplomats and treated our species like primitives unworthy of respect. These actions require acknowledgement. Commander Price moved to stand beside her captain. She whispered, Captain, you're pushing it. Blake didn't look at her. They brought us here to humiliate humanity, to make us kneel before the galaxy. Instead, they learned that humans don't kneel. We stand, we fight when necessary, and when appropriate, we forgive. But first, we require acknowledgement of wrongs committed. The silence stretched across space. Every ship, every being, every sensor array was focused on this moment. The pride of the Galactic Council, the authority that had ruled unchallenged for 5 millennia, was being asked to apologize to a species that had only been in space for 2 centuries. Admiral Morrison's voice came through on a private channel. Blake, what are you doing? Establishing precedent, Admiral, Blake replied quietly. If we don't do this now, they'll try again in a few decades. They need to understand that humanity won't be pushed around. Not now, not ever. On the main screen, the council members were conferring. Blake could see the struggle playing out. Some wanted to refuse, to maintain their pride even if it meant conflict. Others, more pragmatic, understood the situation they were in. Finally, the Etherian ambassador drifted forward. Captain Blake, you ask for something that has never been given in the history of the council. Then it's time to make history, Blake replied. More discussion, more argument, but eventually, inevitably, reality won over pride. Kexval's crystalline form shifted, rearranging itself into what the species considered a formal posture of respect. The movement was subtle, but every being familiar with the crystalline race recognized it. It was their equivalent of a bow. The Galactic Council, Kexval said slowly, each word carefully pronounced, formally apologizes to humanity for its previous actions and judgments. We acknowledge that our approach was misguided and that we underestimated your species' capabilities and rights. One by one, other council members followed suit. The hegemony representative lowered its massive head. The Vaxi ambassador's tentacles arranged themselves in a pattern of submission. Even the energy beings of the Etherian delegation dimmed their glow in a gesture of humility. They weren't just apologizing. They were acknowledging humanity as an equal, perhaps even a superior force in the galaxy. Blake nodded, accepting their gesture with grace. The apology is accepted. Humanity looks forward to working with the Council for the betterment of all species. He turned to his communications officer. Lieutenant Chen, open a channel to the Free Worlds Alliance. When Admiral Kothar appeared on a secondary screen, Blake addressed him directly. Admiral, humanity thanks you for your support today. We won't forget it. The alien's translated voice carried warmth. Captain Blake, your people have shown us that change is possible, that the old ways don't have to define the future. We stand with Earth today and always. Blake then turned back to the Council. Arbiter Kexval, humanity has a proposal. The Free Worlds Alliance has demonstrated their readiness for Council membership. We move that they be granted observer status, with full membership to be reviewed in 1 solar year. This caused another stir, but it was different from before. The Council was already adjusting to the new reality. If humanity wanted the free worlds included, fighting it would only lead to more conflict. Your proposal will be considered, Kexval said carefully. Blake finally sat back down in his command chair. Then our business here is concluded. The Retribution will maintain position until the Council formally adjourns this gathering. Over the next hour, the various fleets began to disperse. The hegemony ships were the first to leave, jumping to hyperspace without ceremony. The Vaxi followed, their organic vessels sliding through space toward their departure points. Others left in small groups discussing among themselves what had just happened. As the ships departed, Lieutenant Miller reported something interesting. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple communication requests. Various species want to open diplomatic channels with Earth." Blake smiled. "Forward them all to Admiral Morrison. That's his department now." Finally, only the Council's core ships remained, along with the human fleet and some Free World's vessels. Kexaval appeared once more on the screen. "Captain Blake," the Arbiter said, "you have changed everything today. The galaxy will never be the same." "Change isn't always bad, Arbiter," Blake replied. "Sometimes it's necessary for growth. Perhaps. Time will tell if humanity's influence will be positive or negative." Blake stood one final time. "Arbiter, let me leave you with something to consider. Today, humanity had the power to destroy every ship here. We could have taken what we wanted through force. Instead, we chose dialogue. We chose to join the Council rather than conquer it. Remember that when you think about our influence on the galaxy." The connection ended. Blake turned to his crew, who were all watching him with expressions of pride and admiration. "All stations stand down from alert status. Helm, set course for Earth. It's time to go home." As the Retribution turned toward home, her massive form caught the light of distant stars. The ship that had made the galaxy kneel had done so not through conquest, but through strength tempered by restraint. Commander Price stood beside Blake's chair as they watched the stars stretch into lines with their jump to hyperspace. "Do you think it will last, Captain?" "The peace? Nothing lasts forever, Commander. But we've bought humanity time. Time to grow, to explore, to become what we're meant to be. And we've shown the galaxy that we won't be pushed around." He paused, then added, "We've also shown them something else. That power doesn't have to mean oppression. That strength can be used to protect, not just destroy. Maybe that lesson will spread." 3 months later, Ambassador Paul Harrison took his seat at the Galactic Council for the first time. The Retribution remained in orbit above the Council chambers, a silent guardian and reminder. When asked why humanity kept a warship at what was supposed to be a place of peace, Harrison simply smiled. "We believe in an old Earth saying," he replied to the assembled representatives. "Speak softly and carry a big stick. The Retribution is our stick. As for speaking softly, well, that's why I'm here." He looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each species representative. Humanity didn't come to the stars to conquer or dominate. We came to explore, to learn, to grow. We want partners, not subjects. We want allies, not vassals. But make no mistake, we will defend our freedom and the freedom of others who seek it. The Council learned to appreciate humanity's approach, firm but fair, powerful but restrained, and always prepared. The Retribution never fired another shot in anger. She didn't need to.